Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat Five segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. I guess we're going to start recording. So welcome, everyone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I guess to start from the reason why this is a little bit different is I've had a very busy last year with the band Cannons that I talk about occasionally on the podcast. And it's been really tough for me to consistently get guests to work around my timeline and also just get new guests every week. It's stressful. I love the show, but it's also hard to schedule. And so to help me get better at scheduling, I needed to breathe some new life into this podcast feed because while I love Big Fat Five, I just want to do something that refreshes me. And so a lot of the podcast streams that I listen to, it's not just one format. It's you trust the host or you trust the world the host has created. And if you look at the feed, there's different little segments and different versions of the show, but it's still all just in the realm of what you trust, which is the host and the world they've created. So I had Eric, which I will let you talk in a second, but don't say anything right now. But there you go. No, but anyways, I had you on like a few years ago, and we kind of did this thing that was based off a thing you do on your Instagram. Is it called Hot Takes or Hot? What do you call it?
It's gone through a bunch of different names, but it's a mouthful right now. It's just controversial music opinions is generally what it's been. Which I need some branding help, maybe, but
no, it's good lawyer speak for sure.
Yeah.
But so I totally ripped you off when I had you on the Big Fat Five, so people go listen to Eric on that show. But yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to maybe have this be the pilot episode of something that you and me organically cultivate, where maybe call it the drum panel, maybe call it something else that we decide on, but just kind of have different drummers on with different opinions. Kind of like, even though I loathe a lot of those political talk shows, they have a panel of different opinions, and so it's always an interesting conversation. And believe me, drummers have opinions.
Oh, yes.
I made a post that I'll be reading from today that I'm sure everyone listening was part of the post or at least is aware of the post, depending on when this comes out, but just asking for controversial drum takes, opinions, and boy, did I get some. So I know that's not like this is a dry well. So yeah, I kind of wanted to have this episode be you and me take on a few of these things and then hopefully get some people that are not us, that meaning like, not the same vibe as us.
Right.
Jerks is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
that's what
dumb
we're looking
jerks.
For.
Yeah.
If you're a jerk, apply here, right?
Please, yeah, there'll be a link in the show notes. But yeah, and then just have it be a fun discussion. Who knows? I'm not getting rid of Big Fat Five. I love that, and I think that'll be the anchor of this feed for sure, but we're just going to have fun with it. So we've been trying to talk about this and do this for a while, and I finally decided to do it, even though I'm not any less busy. Just this is the night that I could make happen. So before we get started, as everyone knows, I'm Ben. I host the Big Fat Five podcast, and you probably know a lot about me, but if you haven't listened to the episode with Eric on or aren't familiar with him, maybe do a little bit of an introduction, and then you won't ever have to do it again.
Sure. Well, first of all, I do want to say that I'm honored to be here. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I've listened pretty much since day one. I'm a day one fan. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah. But yeah, my name's Eric. I've been a pro drummer for a while now. I play in an alternative pop band called Marina City. I do a lot of session stuff around the Chicago area. It's a hardcore band I play with called La Armada. I've been on tour with like a pop punk band recently called Makeout. I play drums.
And you're an educator.
Yes, and I'm an educator. I do a lot of teaching, private lessons, and just finished working with High School Drumline for their band camp, and I have a lot of fun posting like educational content on Instagram sometimes when I'm not busy doing live things. I love to share some education stuff. So, yeah.
So you had, before the post I did today, you had a bunch that I did look at, but I kind of want this to be more of an off the cuff thing too. So I didn't re-look at them. So
okay, yes.
How about we do a tit for tat? You do one, then I'll do one, and then hopefully we can be friends at the end of it. But I'm trying to do a few that maybe we will disagree on.
Sure.
And I should also say I am also a drum instructor, a drum teacher, but it's not my full-time thing. I maybe have 5 or 6 students that a few of them are pretty regular, but a few of them kind of rotate. So it's not something I excel at. It's mostly people that enjoy my playing and want to get my perspective. So I'm not coming at it from as much of a educational background. I think your perspective is a lot different than mine in that sense. I have piss poor technique, and you are amazing. So,
stop!
But yeah, go ahead. What is your first, and then we'll just go, and hopefully people, who knows? Like I said, I kind of wanted to focus on this being a little more off the cuff, and then I want you as listeners to kind of be a part of the journey as we figure this out, because Big Fat 5 has gotten a lot more streamlined for me, and it wasn't that at the beginning. So I want this to be a fun thing for all. I'll stop talking now, Eric. I will let you actually go. So what's your first one?
So I'm going off script here. I'm not looking at the comments just yet. So I'll just start with the one that this is my go-to, the one that I always start with to get people talking. And that is my opinion of that there's too many rudiments. The official, list of rudiments is that there's 40 rudiments, but I'm always just like, look, after we get past 5-stroke roll, do we really need to do, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 17 stroke roll? Because then it gets like repetitive, and we're not learning any new motor functions. So like my controversial opinion that I do a lot with my students, like day 1 lessons, we do talk about rudiments, but we can eliminate half of these right now. Lesson 25s, nope, don't need them. Never play. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be able to play them, but do they really need to be on the list of the 40 most important things to play on the drums?
This comes from complete ignorance. How does something become a rudiment? Is it basic? Like, who makes a new rudiment?
This is a great question. I was having a discussion on my Instagram about this with somebody, and their name escapes me. I really am upset that I can't remember their name, but it's like famous drummer, But he was literally like, I know the powers that be, and I've had this discussion, and they don't want to hear it. Which I assume it's probably like PAS, the Percussive Arts Society. But I don't know, the 40 rudiments have been around forever. Dave Elich made a really great post a few months back talking about something similar, where he was saying that the root is they're from really old military drum corps style. Like, listen, my drum history is not up to snuff, but it's
Bart
like
Vandersee on here.
We're talking early 1900s here, so they're dated and don't have a lot of relevance to where drumming is at in a modern context, which was his thing. My perspective is just, if we look at rudiments as an objective sticking pattern between your right and your left hand, there's just a lot of repetition where we're not learning anything new and practical. That's my argument behind it.
Yeah, my life is better with having been introduced by my, formal educators' rudiments, I'm not sure if that sentence even made sense, but yeah. I think it's a good way to communicate with other drummers. Like, it's kind of like a insert whatever, I don't even know. Is a Rudiments an actual rudiment, or is it one of those?
It is an official rudiment, along with the double and triple Rudiments. Speaking of two that can get out of here, well, come on.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
But it does beg the question to, like, I'm trying to think. So there's this book I'm reading, and maybe it's called Awareness, and it was just like the first time a kid is told what a bird is, they'll never really see a bird ever again. And by that is because before you can conceptualize something and like, oh, that's a bird, or this is a cup. There's so many different kinds of cups. Once your brain goes, oh, that's a cup, and you move on, you stop appreciating it for all its uniqueness. You just
Yes.
think of it as it's a cup, and so you kind of fill in the
Sure.
blanks, whatever, same with the bird.
Goes
So
into
with,
one
like,
box. Yeah.
exactly. And so when you think of something cool on the drums, and then you kind of in your head like, oh, it's I'm just going from this to this to this without realizing it. It kind of takes the magic away,
Sure.
in a way. And again, I haven't really formulated this necessarily too much because I do use rudiments.
Yeah. Well, let's be clear about this. I am by no means anti-rudiment. I mean, like I said, I was teaching drumline all day. I'm a rudiment nerd. I know all my hybrid, drum corps nerd rudiments, which is all great. I am better for having known all that stuff. But I do think that it's overwhelming to put a list of 40 things in front of a student and be like, in order to be a good drummer, you have to know these things. And if we're all being honest with ourselves, about half of them we don't even use, in like a
I
realistic...
would say 90% of them, no one even knows what the hell. I had to ask if a Rudiments was one of them.
Totally. I mean, conservatively, half of them, I would say, closer to 90%. Which is, again, not to say that you shouldn't know how to play all of them, but do we really need to prioritize some of these? That's my main beef.
Well, and also, I mean, you give any student or just any drummer walks on stage, what are they going to play 98% of the time? Singles, doubles, even a paradiddle is just a blend of those
exactly.
two. And then maybe it flams, but that's that's only when I'm trying to play a 4 in the floor beat. There's a lot of flams.
That's the big 4, 100%.
Other than that, it's like even the craziest ones are just variations of those for the most part.
Exactly. If we're going to get real nitpicky, we could do just 4 and that's it. You're good. So done. That's it. We settled it. There's 4 rudiments, guys.
All right, so I'll go to this. This one's fun. So Kevin Moon is overrated. That's not what I want to talk about.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It was just funny that you think he's overrated and you don't even know his real name.
Yeah.
So it's maybe know the drummer's name who you're going to say you're not a fan of, because that probably means you haven't listened to enough of their stuff.
Yeah.
Not that they're saying Keith Moon at the end of every Who song, but still. All right, so I think a real one for me is drum samples are cheating.
Ooh.
So do you want to go first or want me to go first?
I want to hear your take. I want to hear what you got to say.
I don't deal in absolutes, and I'm not a purist in anything. So for someone to just say triggers are cheating, I don't even understand, like, even if the argument is I don't know how to tune a snare drum, there's not enough hours in the day, and for some reason my priority in life is not to know how to tune a tom or snare drum. So live, I just use triggers, or in the studio, I just replace my crappy sounding transients with triggers. Why not? Like, I don't understand. Like, if someone were to go back in time or tell you that, hey, Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine, actually all those Terminator hits on Rage Against the Machine, those are actually all triggered snares. Would that make you go, oh, well, that album sucks now? No. Is art being created? Yes. Are you enjoying it? Hopefully. And then just all the other stuff is just like, why are you stressing about this? As a drummer, if it makes you sound better or makes a song sound more the way the artist wants it to sound, why? Just have a burger.
I think the distinction for a lot of people is usually when they're talking about metal, and specifically with the really fast kick drum playing, where they're playing at like 240 BPM, 16th notes, but it sounds like they're at full velocity, which is generally speaking not typically humanly possible. But I have a few thoughts on this. And I think to me what it boils down to is what you said, in that you don't deal with absolutes. I totally agree with that. I think that there's a big difference between saying that triggers are not for me and the blanket statement, triggers are cheating. Like, for me, one of the most exciting things about playing drums and about playing something that's really fast and technical is to try and work on getting a good sound out of the drums while I do that. And as soon as I sacrifice sound quality for speed, I lose a little bit of enjoyment on a personal level. However, I can totally look at and appreciate the amount of control it takes for someone to do like incredibly fast 240 BPM 16th note kind of feather tapping kick drum stuff, and then you trigger those kicks at a full velocity. That is objectively an incredible skill that has taken a lot of time and effort to develop, and I can super appreciate that, even though I myself have zero interest in ever doing that. Does not appeal to me in what I want to do with my art, but why am I going to knock somebody else's enjoyment? You know, that's their thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement that I don't think there's really ever a situation where triggers are cheating. I think there's just a general skill set behind like triggering your kit. You know, like
Sure.
there's a way that you have to develop your playing in order to do that thing.
Believe me, yes, I am in the throes
yes.
of that right now.
Yeah.
But you just have to think about who's for who. It's kind of like, you know, like the Chinese fortune cookies. You say in bed at the end of, you know, everything, and it makes it funny. You got whenever you have an objective an objective opinion, you got to go for who. And for this person saying it's cheating, it's either for him, he or her, he has such a powerful need to either make sure that everyone knows that every sound that's being produced is from me, or for some reason they need to know to them to enjoy it, that the sound that they're hearing that's being produced from the drummer they're either listening to or watching live is coming from someone really doing it organically in real time. And you have to ask yourself, why do I need that? I'm not saying that's wrong or right to need that, but figure out, is that more of a me thing? I just want to, like, it's something that I have a passion for. I've spent so many hours working on it so that when I hear someone else do it and they're cheating and they get the accolades and I don't because they're not,
Right.
that's like something that maybe you should think about, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the sort of interesting, and maybe this touches more into quantization and sort of being honest with your audience, especially on social media. But I do think that there is an interesting counter argument about, do triggers and things like quantization give younger players an unreal expectation? It's sort of like the model Photoshop effect. You know, is it now unrealistic to expect that a drummer is physically capable of doing these things? Which I think is an interesting argument. Sure, if you're going to do this, maybe be honest with your audience that you're doing it and don't feel any type of shame about it, you know? But then the flip side to this whole thing is you also now are starting to see people in the metal community who have grown up listening to quantized and triggered drums and are doing it for real. Like, Matt Garska is the real deal. Or, I mean, we've all been watching the Eloy Casagrande Slipknot videos. That guy defies physics as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
But, I mean, like, talk about speed and velocity being in the same place. Like, that guy's defying all the rules that we've, like, that guy's not triggering his kit. He's using an EAD, I think, to get all those sounds. So, like, those guys are the real deal. So, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I see why people will view it as cheating, but I think we just got to take a step back and just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's gonna keep moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of one of those things where, like, life finds a way, and you can either, I mean, it sounds like an old man saying, either get off my lawn about it or deal with it. And I think you just have to deal with it. Find a way. If you think it's cheating, find a way to make triggers work for you, and then you become then it becomes a strength you have, as opposed to just being like, don't use them because it's cheating. It's like, well, there's some cool ways to play things live that could have a delay effect that you could use to play along with and have a drum, like a conversation with yourself. It doesn't, you know, just getting mad at something because someone else is using it for one sample and making it a velocity is is I'm going to say, I'll deal in absolutes right now, is not the way to go about it. I think it's a negative way to go about it. I mean, you can go back as far as saying, oh, well, the first time someone was able to mic a band where, like, the vocalists and the guitar and everything separately, and they were able to mix it afterwards. I'm sure there were some people like, but that's
cheating. No one's using their dynamics.
Exactly. You know, or compression or EQ. It's like, hey, if that little buzz at 7K and the snare, that needs to be there, or like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Do you know how to tune a drum? You shouldn't have to EQ after you play.
Exactly. Anyways, all right. So we got a little bit of sauce out of that. So what's your next one?
All right. I'm gonna spin off of something that you said, and also, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna spin this into a question because I'm curious how much Ringo and Lars hate we got in the comments here.
Actually, a lot more other drummers that I didn't expect.
Really?
Hate.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, Travis Barker, and I don't mean of course because I agree with them, but of course, Travis Barker is just as polarizing as everyone else.
Yeah.
Stuart Copeland.
If you're famous, your name's on the list. That's
exactly.
it. You know?
Buddy Rich, Earl, and Carl Palmer both got on the list, and Meg White got a few. She's underrated, but I think we've gotten to the point now where it's kind of like the common knowledge. Everyone goes, I mean, yeah, she's a beast.
Listen, she's for sure got haters unjustly, I would say. But yeah, I mean, I guess I spoiled my own opinion on this issue. First of all, I want to say that when I typically do this on my page, I try to not make it about dogging and calling out other drummers. I like the idea of us as drummers coming together and building a community that's not built on the backs of dragging other drummers down. That is not something that is of interest to me. And maybe people would say I'm being overly diplomatic. Whatever, I don't care. I am already, count me out of calling anyone overrated or underrated or whatever. But I want to get this one out of the way early because I know it's always gonna be there. I cannot fathom calling Lars or Ringo or Meg White overrated. That is insane to me. I was having an interesting discussion with somebody recently, and I think nowadays we look at drummers like specifically Ringo with our 2024 eyes, with 2024 goggles on, right? We just watched Eloy Casagrande on Instagram. We're watching Jojo Mayer and we're watching Benny Greb, and then we look at Ringo and we're like, what is this guy? And then we forget that Ringo had like 4 shoulders to stand on. There was like nobody before him to inspire what he was doing. There was no, like, the drum set as an instrument was less than 100 years old if we're being kind about it. It's probably closer to like 50 years old at that point, at least in a modern context. And rock and roll was literally being invented by his band. So when you look at someone like Ringo Starr, like, that guy is inventing how we play the drum set now. And everyone else since then has stood on his shoulders, and people who were inspired by Ringo, like, there's generations of inspiration that has come after Ringo that leads us to the Jojo Mayers and the Benny Grebs and the Eloy Casagrandes. So to look at Ringo as if like he grew up on YouTube watching all the best drummers in the world and that's what he came up with, you know, it's like,
imagine what Ringo, the guy who has the creativity and the demeanor and the ability to be in a band like Ringo did. I wonder, what kind of drummer he might have been at Eloy Casagrande. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's anybody's guess. Because at the end of the day, like, that guy made all of those parts up out of nothing. Like, there was nothing there before, and then he made something, and then we all took it. And we're like, cool, this is how drumming is now. I compared it to calling the Wright brothers bad pilots. Like, that's the way I look at it. Calling Ringo a bad drummer is like calling the Wright brothers bad pilots. It's like, that dude's a pioneer, any way you slice it.
When is that shirt coming out?
Oh,
I know that. That needs to be your merch.
I'm in. I'm in. We got to, again, figure out a more concise way to put it.
There's something there. Maybe someone listening, you can write in, but like, I wanted to be like, if Ringo's not right, spelled like right, like the brothers, then I don't want to be wrong, or something. Or that I want to be wrong, but then wrong spelled with no W.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, like Ringo. If they're right, then I don't want to be wrong. I don't know. There's something cooking in there. But it's like, I always get the most nervous. Not when I'm walking on stage. I am the most stressed out when it's me and 2 songwriters and they're like, okay, I'm going to show you a song for the first time. Just tell me what drum part you're thinking of. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm like, I get like the start sweating because I'm like, that's when your creativity, like you're taking nothing and they're not giving you any idea. And I'm not saying Paul or John or George never gave Ringo any ideas, or like I'm assuming a lot of the times Paul probably sat down and was like, hey, maybe think of something like this. But if there was a band that just had one hit, I'll give them two. What if they had two number one hits as big as two Beatles songs? They'd be a household name. But the Beatles had so many more of them. And every Beatles song is so different too on the drums, especially when they got later. So it's just like you have to think of the metrics that you judge what a good drummer is. And then there's no one or the other that is like has a more higher rated value. Even some drummers that speed up, like who was it? It was on Sting's first solo record.
Omar Hakim, right?
Omar Hakim, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. It was a song
I listened to that episode, that's why I know. I guess.
Nice, yeah. And Omar Hakim speeds up so much, so it's obviously, and he's known as one of the best, so it's not always like staying the same tempo.
Well, I mean that brings me to Lars. It's like everyone always talks about how Lars's tempo is so bad, and he's so sloppy, and I just go, yeah, because to me, like, that's what makes Metallica as heavy as they are, is because they're just this giant plodding, like if you put some super slick, perfectly in time drummer into Metallica and just dropped him in, that music's going to sound so sterile. Like you need that just super wide, nasty, stank face pocket that only Lars can give. The other aspect of this is like all of these drummers, Meg White, Lars, Ringo, all they've tried to be is the best drummer for their band. In my mind, as soon as Lars auditions to play for Sting, sure, maybe he doesn't have the skill set, you know? Like, yeah, let's go. But like, there's no way you can sit there and tell me that Lars isn't the best drummer for Metallica, or Ringo isn't the best drummer for the Beatles, or Meg White isn't the best drummer for the White Stripes. That's all they've tried to be, and just looking at their band's success tells you that they did their job exceptionally well.
Who knows what Lars is going through right now? I mean, I will be the first to admit that, yeah, the last 10 plus years, there's been a lot of epic fail videos that I've been like, interesting. All right.
Sure.
Definitely, that is an epic fail.
Yeah.
But how can you judge someone? You're talking about four giants that you could stand on their shoulders, Ringo. I mean, back in the day, Lars was probably standing on four giant mounds of cocaine at 20 years old. So you expect a guy who's pushing 70 to be able to do what a kid from Oakland in the 70s and 80s could do? No. Are you kidding me? And yeah, I could say Lars is just like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to play whatever. And also, I mean, this is going to get dark, but like, who knows if he's not dealing with something, but he still wants to play? Like, who knows?
Well, I mean, and let's be totally transparent about it. Is like, what incentive does Lars have to get better, anyways?
Exactly.
It's like, look, I already play in the biggest band in the world. We're selling out every arena we play. Does it like if he doesn't want to practice, like, do your thing, man. You've earned it. You get to do whatever you want, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and it's a bunch of people saying, oh, Lars Ulrich is a shitty drummer. Is that going to make any less people buy the records or any have less people go to the show? No. If anything, it's the opposite.
Right.
So he probably leans into the fact that people think I suck.
Totally.
Nice. I'm going to go open-handed tonight.
Yeah, I'm into it. Lars is the man. And, talk about trailblazing. That guy basically invented snare and crash at the same time. Like,
oh, yeah.
Come on. Crashing on two?
Yeah,
like,
the beat two has never been more terrified.
Exactly.
I'll put him up there with Travis when it comes, and Stuart Copeland, when it comes to just fun drum parts to geek out about and learn. And then when you do them and you can hit the little hits with them, there's nothing better.
All you need to do is just go to a Metallica show and watch everyone play the snare fill in Sad But True. Just come on. Who hasn't played that on their steering wheel while they're driving? And then you're going to tell me Lars is a bad drummer? I don't want to hear it.
Let's see what the next one is. Virgin kick drums. Why?
Ooh.
I guess I can go first on this one.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, who cares? My thing is this. So, have I gone back in recent years, and if I have one rack tom, Do I put it on a mount and put it in the bass drum? You bet your bottom dollar I do. But that's also because I don't want to set up. I play a lot of shows. You do too. I don't want to set up the extra mount and there's extra things to swing your or to fit your snare mic into. So now I just go, wow, one less thing. It looks cleaner to me. But like with Cannons, I do have it kind of offset to where almost as angled as if you have two literal kick drums and then like the two toms in the middle. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have it to where I can't have. Like, I actually need to have my two toms because literally it's this one fill in a Cannon song that I have to do with moving down the kit, but I have to bring my right hand back to the snare. That's the only reason why I had this whole stupid setup.
All right.
But when I have to do that, it's an aesthetic thing purely, but I don't want to have just the tom mount on the bass drum not being utilized. Mm-hmm. I think that looks not clean to me. So from a strictly aesthetic standpoint, unless you're able to have a tom that can fit in the spot where your little mount could be, then sure, of course, I do it myself. But I think Virgin bass drums look cool too.
Listen, I've been dreaming of my future dream kit here, and I'm hoping to get it ordered this year. We'll see. And I'm definitely going Virgin kick drum. And for me, it's strictly an aesthetic thing. I personally think the only people that can really be truly upset about having like a non-Virgin kick drum is if you're maybe playing jazz clubs and you have your kick drum that's totally wide open. There's nothing in it. And then you don't have a porthole on the front of the head. Those are the only people who can be like, only Virgin kick drums. We're all putting pillows and all kinds of crap in our kick drums. Some people have their kick drums like half full of blankets and towels and whatever, and then we're going to be like, yeah, but the little hole at the top of the drum totally impacts the sound. Come on, guys, we're being a little too hardcore about it sometimes.
All right, I mean, yeah, I could go on forever, but yeah, if you want to go,
no,
go
I want to hear more of the questions that we got in.
All right, so you could play a set with $200 drums or $2,000 drums. 90% of the time, the audience will never tell the difference. I'll let you go on that first.
I mean, if we're really talking a $200 kit, I don't know what $200 can buy you right now.
It may be used. Maybe it could be a $400 kit.
Yeah, that's true. But listen, there's something to be said for good heads and good tuning that can get you very far. I will say, if we're truly talking about the difference, cymbals are where you're going to hear it the most in my mind. A cheap cymbal is always going to sound rough,
I was walking through Washington Square Park 2 days ago, and if you don't know the park, it's in New York City, and there's always at least 2 or 3 bands in the summertime playing, just like trios and quartets and whatnot. And there was this guy playing brushes, and he did end up going to Hot Rods. But regardless, the brushes, he was playing an SPL, like the kit that has like maybe like the bass drum has 4 lugs. It's like a 16-inch by 4 bass drum, and then he has a tom that was attached by. It's like really whatever. He was making that thing sound so cool and vibey, and it fit that trio so well. So I know that might be a little bit of a different perspective, I guess, than like playing a rock show or whatever. If he would have been playing some Craviotto with roughly the same sizes, I don't think I could have heard a difference.
Yeah. It wouldn't make more people stop and watch him,
Exactly.
So which is a very fair point. Like it's at the end of the day, it truly is about your touch, your feel, your approach on the instrument more than anything else. And then like, tuning and heads after that. And then if we're talking dollars, it is going to be cymbals still probably that's going to give you away. But no, I think perfect what your hands can do first and then spend money on your equipment.
Yeah, and I would say when it comes to shells, because there are so many people talking about shells and how no one can tell the difference in wood. For me, a drum set, if it has good hardware and if it's inspiring to look at and it inspires me to play, that's all I care about.
No, I think that inspiration thing is such a great point. I think about that all the time. People are always like talking, like comparing cymbal brands, and I'm just like, there's a certain, like, I don't like playing on bright cymbals because I don't feel super inspired when I play them, but I have friends who make them sound amazing. Like, I'll play a buddy's kit with like A customs and I sound like garbage because I just don't know how to get a good sound out of those cymbals. But then I watch him play and I'm like, they sound beautiful, like what the equipment draws out of your soul, if we're being really hippie about it.
Please, dude.
Yeah. Again, it can, things can like be your vibe or not be your vibe too, and that's totally fair. But to me, what it really boils down to is like developing your touch on the instrument, your instincts, even like your breadth of music knowledge to pull inspiration from. Like, you sit on like a really kind of dry kit and you can go like, oh, I want to do like a Gadsden thing. Like, you have to know what a Gadsden thing is in the first place to be able to do that,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I mean, this is going to be kind of esoteric, but when someone says, I don't like this band or whatever, it's always fun to have bands that I don't get in my arsenal of things I can pull out with, like, if I have a deadline for a big fat snare drum meme, which that sentence doesn't even make sense, but let's just say there was a deadline and I had to get it posted by a certain time, and I had no idea what to put as the background music, but I'm like, oh, there was that ridiculous Gojira song from that Olympic ceremony, and I just find that and I put it on it, and that's the reason that clip went viral. So it's like, even if something doesn't fit with you, it's always fun to explore music, because I would like to think that the best artists, I won't name any, whatever, but just think of the best artists in whatever field you can think of when I say that. I would like to think that the top ones in those are probably some of the most open-minded people in the world.
Totally.
So why not strive for that? There's very rarely that there's something that or like Brody Simpson, I think I talked about this with Joe Snickel, about how if there's something about a certain band or music that why you don't like it, put that in a little box, be like, okay, I hate this thing, I hate the singers, whatever they do. And then be like, but what can I get out of this that is fun? And if you don't know why you don't like something and you're like, this is just stressing me out, I don't know. I'm not saying explore it, because that could cause heart palpitations. Yeah. But if you know you don't like something for a certain reason, see if you can, as an artist, challenge yourself to get past that and find, I don't know, something to say good about it.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I always say nothing is for everybody, but I mean, like, there's always something to appreciate about everything, Yeah. If any given song hits 1 million plays on Spotify or whatever, people are resonating with it, and it has value.
Going past or going back to inspirations in your drums. So I'm looking at your drums in the background. Do you have a reason why? I mean, I would maybe call that eggshell. And then your Sunburst kit. Why did those speak to you, or were they just the ones that were available at the time when you wanted a new kit?
Oh man, I've always gravitated towards like natural finishes. That's been my thing. So like the Sunburst is like, the natural finish vibe with a little bit of burst, and then the eggshell kits. I just like the classy look. I like bringing classy drums to like a punk rock setting. Sometimes. It's a fun juxtaposition for me. So
I love that answer. That's the reason why, if you would have been like, by the way, I actually put the Gretsch badges on there, that's actually like a really bad whatever brand kit.
Totally.
I'd be like, yeah, but it sounds good in the videos to me, and you are inspired to play it. So it's like that. Why would that matter?
Right. It's funny you should say that, because I do have like the Gretsch Brooklyn logo on the front head. Just because I love the look of that logo, not because I'm trying to masquerade that I have nicer drums than I actually do. Nice. I just like, it's got that vintage classy vibe, I can't help myself.
Have you ever had a drummer walk up to you and he's like, hey man, I know what game you're trying to pull over here?
Fortunately I haven't had that experience. I did have one guy go, oh, Brooklyn's nice, and I was like, I gotta fess up, they're not. But I do love these drums. I don't have a bad thing to say about them. I just really like that front head logo.
Yeah, we're going through these. I mean, I'm having a great time, so I definitely
Same.
want to. This is more fun than I thought it was going to be. Not that I didn't think it was going to be fun,
Yeah,
but
what
okay.
the
How
heck,
about,
man?
I know this is actually a good time. I was like really bummed that it is. No, so the next one, this we can go a lot of different ways with this. Most social media, and I'm not being too controversial right now. There are controversial. We should probably not have the word controversial in the title if I can't say the word. So drum panel it is. So most social media drummers are diluting what being a good drummer means. And I'm saying I'm trying to, these are safer ones today.
Sure. This is, look, I'm rubbing my hands together because this is a good one.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
I had an epiphany recently, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. In the year 2024, and probably for at least maybe longer, the past 4, 5, maybe even decade, I think that being a social media drummer is now the gig for people. I think that too often we are looking at social media drummers through the lens of what is going to get us the gig. And for, players like myself, that is what social media is, to be clear. Like, social media is a means to an end for me personally, but there are a lot of drummers nowadays where that is the end. Like, there are players who don't want to gig, Like, there's players who just want to teach, and that's their thing. There's players who want to just create the most insane fills that they possibly can and do all these crazy stick tricks and post it to social media, and that's their source of income. That is their gig, And I think that now that this is like a new budding arena for artistry, not just in drums, but in any artistic field, I think we need to look at it as its own thing, When you look at social media drummers doing these crazy stick tricks, sure, maybe the music director that's watching it, that's looking for a drummer, is going to be like, maybe they're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to hire them to play this Kelly Clarkson tour I got coming up or whatever. Maybe the drummer that posted that video doesn't want that tour to begin with. They're happy in their room doing their thing, So I think we just have to look at it as its own avenue and its own source of inspiration. And it's cool that there's people who are out there pushing the limits of the instrument and doing all kinds of fun, wacky things. And, who cares if it's not going to lead to a gig for them? Maybe that's not their goal. And, the other side is maybe it will lead to a gig. We don't know. But yeah, I've started to view it as a separate thing.
Yeah, and it's just like for who? I mean, when they degrade a career that involves mostly social media, like it's and I think there was a whole big thing like maybe a year ago between a few drummers that not being a real gigging drummer or whatever. And yeah, I grapple with it because I definitely, not when it comes to, I grapple with the initial thing that we're talking about. I don't grapple with the fact that I think it's definitely a career opportunity. Yeah. And I think I get mad at myself when it comes to my Instagram because I don't showcase a lot of my drumming on there, which is my fault because it's hard to, it's scary, I'm assuming the initial videos that you posted were a lot scarier to upload. Now you've just become so desensitized to like hearing yourself and whatever, but I don't really know how I use Instagram. It's how I keep in touch with a lot of my musician friends. It's how I keep in touch with a lot of my friends that are doing things. I let people know what I'm doing. But if I wanted to start doing more videos, I would probably just, in my head, justify that hard work for saying it's my business card.
Sure.
And I would probably do things that are a little more true to the song, but showing that I have some showmanship. And that's how I would use it. And if people know the angle and what they're using and why they're using it, then have at it. But I think more so to what this was going back to saying is I think this is the part I grapple with. I do think that there is maybe, I'm not saying a net negative, but I think every decade has its limitations and its negative aspects to what's going on. I think that there is a case to be made that there are a lot of young drummers that are not learning drums primarily from listening to records and trying to use their brain to figure out what's going on you can just be the most cheesy thing to say. We can be enginize, not engineers. And so a lot of people don't know that maybe what a drummer's doing isn't the actual take they did, or the fact that they did so much other things that if you were to play the same way that drummer did, you would sound like shit, or you would sound different from that drummer in the very least. And so I think it is, sometimes I wonder if it is doing a little bit of a disservice if kids, which is what I think this person's talking about, kids finding out, or someone who doesn't know how to be a better drummer is looking at certain things and being like, well, as long as I try and look like that or try and play like that person looks like they sound, or in just not listening to records and just closing your eyes and trying to figure out what the drummer did and kind of funnel it through your own way of doing things, instead of like, well, their hi-hat's this much or their toms over here, that's why it's easier for them to do it. You do lose a little bit of that sense of the ability to develop a voice. I think it's harder to develop a voice when you're just spoon-fed, this thing you like, this is exactly how it is.
I understand where you're coming from. I feel like part of it, and what I'm trying to get to is to like to make sure that people have a context for what they're seeing. You know, going back to triggers, it's like understanding that triggers are being used as a tool, or that, you know, if we're watching somebody on social media do like impossible stick tricks while playing blazing fast double bass, it's understanding that that is catering to a social media audience, and that it's not what's appropriate for joining your high school jazz band. You know,
Exactly.
So it's like, to me, it's like providing that context to players is important. And to play devil's advocate, to your point, me as an insufferable elitist younger high school kid, I was like so anti Travis Barker, because I was like, he's just showy and, you know, whatever. And then like now
I would
that
have loved to have met that Eric.
Oh, I was the worst. I wouldn't want to be in a room with me right now. So, you know, I was really big into Dream Theater and like super nerdy prog rock. And that's like what I grew up on. So anything that wasn't that, I snubbed my nose at. And now I play in a pop band and play in, you know, all types of pop punk bands. Like I learned to contextualize Travis Barker and then appreciate what he does in an entirely new lens. And, you know, I wouldn't be caught dead saying that Travis Barker, like saying the things that I said about Travis Barker when I was younger as the player I am now. Like, I'm embarrassed about my former elitist stances that were just total garbage in the first place. So to me, it's like, I do think at the end of the day, those younger drummers will learn about context, and they'll be like, oh, okay, well, I learned all the cool stick tricks that I saw on TikTok, and then when I did it for the band I auditioned for, they laughed at me. You know, like I think truly, if you're going to dive into an instrument and take it seriously, you will learn to contextualize everything eventually.
Yeah, and I guess to agree with you on that, the most disservice I think would happen in a scenario when a drummer never plays with anyone, has never taken, meaning like other musicians, and has never taken lessons, or even had someone be in a room with them and been like, whatever. And all they do is consume social media, and then they go to their first gig, and that might be a bit of a train wreck. But I think as long as you're playing with other people, which I think is so important, and you're trying to respect your craft enough, I think eventually, I agree with you. I think context, they'll find out real quick that, things aren't always as they appear, for sure.
Totally. Just to play out the worst case scenario, our sort of nightmare perspective on this is the drummer who grows up watching social media players and then mimicking the high energy stick trick stuff, which, for the record, I'm very much not anti-stick tricks. So, but anyways, someone who dives into that world and learns all the quote unquote social media tricks, I think in a decade's time, we could see a wave of drummers who don't have an interest in playing with other people, which is an interesting thought experiment. Part of me is like, oh, that's like a travesty that that the drums are now being used in a way that it wasn't designed for. We think of the drums as primarily an accompaniment instrument. Am I saying that right?
I mean, I'm stupid, so continue.
Same. But, we think about the instrument as designed to play with other people. It is meant to make other people sound good. Nobody wants to go to a jazz club and hear just a drum kit. I'm curious, what the artistic future of the instrument is in a world where maybe someone grows up just listening to the drums as its own instrument, and then that's all they ever want to do with it is.
But I mean, to continue down that line of thinking, who are we to say that's if they're happy,
right,
and they can make a living? Is that
totally
not music?
Yeah, I mean that's a worthwhile artistic venture in a lot of ways, and if you can do it, more power to you.
Exactly. And I would say my skill set is not necessarily in the jazz realm because I've only really learned and played with people and when it comes to rock and pop and more distorted guitars, distorted things. So I've never played in the context of jazz. So maybe there's some jazz drummers that are would be the same perspective as us who have played with people, talking about people who have never played with people. It's if they're able to execute an expression of art, and it might be a train wreck if they try and play with people with whatever metrics you would say a train wreck would be. Mm-hmm. Who cares?
Right.
And also going back to what you were saying about the drums being that crazy word, accompaniment instrument.
Yeah.
I was reading this book, or this excerpt from this book. I did not read the whole book. I think it was called How Beatles Ruined Rock and Roll or something. And it's a provocative title because I think it is actually very welcoming towards the Beatles, or loving towards the Beatles. But I think a passage in it was, and I'm butchering this, but they were talking about just music in general has taken such a big turn since its creation, because at first the only way you could hear music was if you were a musician yourself, or you were hearing musicians play to you. And very rarely would there be a big orchestra playing to just one dude who's having a sad day. You would usually have to be in a communal setting. And so music was just always associated with not a certain emotion, but just community. And then throughout time, now music is very rarely back in the day could someone go, I just want to be alone in my room. Let me invite the whole band to just play for me. But now music can be used not only in your own room with your speakers, but when you're walking through, let's say, New York City. You can just have headphones on, and music is a way of being isolating or isolative.
That's interesting.
And so it's just the way people use it is totally different. And so it's who cares if some person wants to play drums by themselves and they're considered a successful artist because they can make money and feel artistically fulfilled. I can't even imagine what music's going to be sounding like or made with in the next 30 years.
Totally.
It's scary,
kind of terrifying.
But yeah. Well, Eric, we have so much more to get through. And so I definitely want to do this again for sure.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, let's have this, people listening. I think this is going to be an ongoing segment. We'll have more drummers, but it'll really be, I don't know. Sometimes it might be just Eric and someone else, me and someone else, the both of us and two other people. But I think just this is something that would be exciting. I already know you enjoy doing it.
Oh, yes.
Because you've been doing it for a while. The busier I get, the more I need to make sure that the things we're doing are exciting me. And this is exciting me. So if you don't like it and you wish we were doing Big Fats five times a month, who knows? Maybe I'll hate this after a while and we'll go back to it. But for the time being, I got to follow my serotonin. And so that's this. But this is really fun, dude.
Likewise.
Okay, people listening, I'm going to stop recording, but I am still going to say bye to Eric for a second. So bye, Eric, for now.
Bye.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using Isotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at isotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye.